introduction. So I'm so pleased to be speaking with all of you tonight about the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to jump right in. This story jumps right into the action, and the action happens to be a battle. So one thing I'll do tonight is I will fill you in on the backstory, both because it will help orient you and also because it's just a cool story and I think it'll be fun and interesting for you to hear. All right, but first let's start by getting oriented. We're reading a story set in a place called Kurukshetra in northern India, and it's written between 500 and 200 BCE. And so one reason that you don't get a lot of backstory when you're reading the Bhagavad Gita is that it's a skinny, teeny little part of a much larger sacred Hindu text called the Mahabharata. That's the Mahabharata. So Gita, G-I-T-A, Gita means song, and Bhagavad means God or Lord. And it's even sometimes translated as the beloved. So if the Mahabharata, this text right here, was a musical, the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Beloved, would be a musical number right in the middle of it, right? So like if it helps you to imagine like jazz hands, everybody pausing and breaking out into song, that's what the Bhagavad Gita is. It's the song in the middle of a musical. So the Mahabharata itself, this larger text of which the Gita is a part, is a massive epic of both prose and poetry, and it's about twice as long as the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament put together. So if you took like the Christian Bible, right, what they call the Old Testament, the New Testament, put it together and then doubled it, that would be the Mahabharata. It's about 1.2 million words. All right, so the title, Mahabharata, means the tale of the great Bharata dynasty. Maha means great, and Bharata is actually the name of the first character that we're going to meet, King Bharata. There's King Bharata right there at the top. We're going to build a family tree so you can understand who are all the different characters and how are they related to one another. So starting here at the top of King Bharata, he has two sons. Dhritarashtra is the elder, and Pandu is the younger. So to make things easier to remember, let's call Dhritarashtra Big D. Okay? All right. So typically, the throne, when Bharata dies, would go to the elder son. Right? We're familiar with this patriarchal tradition. You guys are familiar with this tradition? Throne goes to the elder son? Yeah? Okay. All right, but in this case, things are a little bit different because Dhritarashtra, Big D, the elder son, is blind. And here's the thing, this blindness is not merely a visual impairment. It's not that he just literally can't see. In Sanskrit, the word avidya, I'm going to put it up here so you can see it, avidya means not seeing clearly. So you can see right in the middle there's that root, V-I-D, vid. It means like seeing or piercing through. The prefix a means not. Probably familiar with this already from words derived from the Greek. Start with an a, that means not. And then the last morpheme, ya, Y-A, is an intensifier. It means really or a lot. So literally, avidya means not seeing clearly. And metaphorically, it means ignorance, sort of a moral blindness, having misconceptions about how life works, not understanding the way that your actions affect other people. So most of the secondary texts that I have read say that Dhritarashtra's, Big D's, blindness is not a physical impairment as much as it is avidya, which it means like a deep ignorance. So Dhritarashtra misperceives the world and thus is not suitable for ascending to the throne. You with me so far? So this background it's just critical to understanding the very first line of the Bhagavad Gita. The very first line is Dhritarashtra asking another character by the name of Sanjaya to narrate for him. When you open your book to the first teaching, here is Dhritarashtra saying, Sanjaya, tell me what my sons and the sons of Pandu did when they met, wanting to battle on the field of Kuru, on the field of sacred duty. So he's asking the question because Dhritarashtra needs Sanjaya to be his eyes. He needs him to be his guide because he literally cannot see what's happening. All right, so back to the family tree. Let's talk about the younger brother, Pandu. I think I'm going to feel more comfortable if my notes are on this side. I can see you a little bit better. Okay, so Pandu is characterized as being extremely virtuous and intelligent. He's totally able to run the kingdom fairly. And that would be the end of the story, right? Pandu ascends to the throne. What's the problem? Well, okay, there's a problem. Pandu is cursed. And the curse is that while he is king, he is unable to have children. So he retires to the forest, and Dhritarashtra, despite his blindness, despite his avidya, takes over in the absence of an adult heir. So while Pandu is in the forest, his wife uses a blessing in order to get pregnant, and Pandu is finally able to have children. So out in the forest, Pandu's wife intelligently figures out how to reverse the curse, and they have 5 sons. Okay. These 5 sons are called the Pandava brothers. I'm going to add another layer to the family tree. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So eventually, Pandu has had these 5 sons. He brings them back to the kingdom, back to the palace, to be educated, right? So, in the meantime, what has Dhritarashtra been up to? He's been super busy. He sired 100 sons. Yeah, he's got that big D energy. All right, so here we go. Throughout the literature, sorry guys, I just had to do it. Throughout the literature, we hear that the Kauravas are Big D sons. They're the 100 sons, okay? And the Kauravas, they're like the bad cousins. They're chaotic, they're materialistic, and the the Pandavas, Pandu's sons, are mostly pretty noble. Like the thing is they all live in the palace together. They're sharing tutors, they're playing games, and then among the cousins, trouble starts to brew. So what happens is the Pandavas, Pandu's 5 boys, are just badass. They exceed their cousins at everything. They're really good at all the warrior skills. They're seen as very virtuous. All the tutors love them better. And Arjuna, in particular, let me show you a picture of Arjuna. There's Arjuna. He's the middle son of Pandu. But he's the favored pupil. He's considered just the best, the golden boy. And he arouses a ton of jealousy in the Kauravas. So here's Arjuna. You can see him with his bow. And he has his hand on his heart, right? He's a very soulful person. Okay, but who doesn't like this? Who really hates Arjuna? This guy, Duryodhana. Duryodhana is Dhritarashtra's eldest son. And just to sort of put him in line with his father, we're going to call him Little D. Okay? Little D, yeah. He's super envious of his cousin Arjuna. So we're going to go back to the family tree just so you can see. Okay, so time has passed. Pandu finally has a son almost old enough to assume the throne. And it's not Arjuna. Arjuna is, he's the golden boy because he's like the best at everything, but he's the middle child. So he's not actually in line for the throne. It's the eldest, and his name is Yudhishthira. So Pandu's eldest son, Yudhishthira, goes to ascend to the throne. Okay, so who's mad about that? little d. Okay, so he's enraged. He feels like, he understands that his father was passed over, right, because of the avidya, the blindness, but he thinks that after Pandu, after his uncle, it should go back to him. He feels like it should come back to Dhritarashtra's line. And so he's really mad that now the kingship is going to go down the Pandava line. Okay, so little d, Duryodhana, he starts scheming. And he hatches an evil plot to assassinate his cousin, to assassinate Yudhishthira. It doesn't work. He tries a few times and nothing seems to work. So he gets a little more clever, and we all know, and I'm telling you now, Yudhishthira, the oldest Pandava brother, the one who's supposed to be king, he has one weakness, and his weakness is gambling. He loves to play dice, and he cannot resist a game of dice, no matter what the odds are. So, Duryodhana challenges him to a crooked dice game. And this is so funny. Duryodhana is like, you know what, we're going to play dice, and whoever loses has to go live in the forest with all their family for 12 years. And because the eldest Yudhishthira has such a weakness for gambling, he's not like the smartest one. So what happens is, little d, Duryodhana wins because the game is fixed, because Duryodhana was going to win, right? And so Yudhishthira is like, okay, I lost. I guess I have to go to the forest with my whole family. So they all get banished out to the forest. It's Yudhishthira, the eldest, and his 4 brothers. They all have to go. And here's a funny little side note that I want to share. At this point in the story, all 5 brothers share one wife. This is a rare example of polyandry, right, as opposed to polygyny or polygamy. This is her, an image, a rendering of her. Her name is Draupadi. And she's known for her dark complexion as the most beautiful woman in the land. So we see in many cultures, especially with the influence of colonialism, that there's this sort of upliftment of lighter skin, and in this story it's the opposite, which I think is super amazing and cool. So Draupadi was very dark-skinned, and she was coveted for her beauty. All right, so how did they share? Well, each brother got 1 year with her, and then they would rotate. Yeah. Later on, they had other wives, so things changed. But at this point in time, she was always considered like the favorite wife, and she had all 5 to herself. All right, so this banishment out in the forest is supposed to last 12 years. And then on the 13th year, they are supposed to wander the land unseen. So all 5 brothers and Draupadi are supposed to wander around, and no one is supposed to see them during that 13th year. If they survive, says little d, this is Duryodhana, if they survive, they can come back and claim the throne. So of course Duryodhana is betting that they don't survive. He's thinking, oh, they're going to have to hang out in the forest for 12 years, sort of, eating berries and stuff, and then they're going to have to wander around for a whole year and be unseen. He's pretty sure that's the last he's going to see of the Pandavas. He's not really worried about them coming back. But what happens, the Pandavas survive. They're fine. And then they come back and they're like, hey, we did our punishment, we're back, and we're ready to claim that throne. And do you think Duryodhana is going to step down and be like, okay, guys? No, he's not going to do that. He's little d. He is going to say, you know what, if you want this throne, you better come and take it from me. So that's the battle. So when you open the book and they're in the middle of the battle, this is the battle. This is Duryodhana, the Kaurava brothers, the sons of Big D, against the Pandava brothers, the sons of Pandu. All right, so battle is going to happen. Now, this is where we're going to meet Krishna. Who or what is Krishna? Krishna Krishna is literally everything. Every blade of grass, the fragrance of the earth, the taste of water, the sound of Om. According to the Lord, everything we see, great and small, is a fragment of him, a pearl on his webbed thread. He is both being and non-being. He says of himself, I am the self abiding in the heart of all creatures. I am time. I am death. I sustain this entire world with a fragment of my being. And he is incarnated, he is embodied as a sweet, blue-skinned, flute-playing goat herder. It's Krishna. Isn't he cute? Yeah. He's cute. All right, so why are we meeting Krishna? Why is he showing up? Like, I thought we were going to have a battle. Okay, so this is what happens. Krishna inserts himself wherever, whenever chaos prevails on earth. Okay, so there's chaos is about to go down, so Krishna's going to show up and try to keep the world turning. He is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, who is the god of maintaining, sustaining, preserving the world. So it's Krishna's job to not let the world fall apart on itself. It's Krishna's job to keep it going. So sometimes when stuff is messed up, Krishna needs to come down and restore order. So he swoops in. Here's another image of Krishna. All right. So this is one of those times when order needs to be restored, right? There's about to be a battle. So Krishna calls for a meeting between Duryodhana, little d, and Arjuna. Why Arjuna? Well, Arjuna is the best of the Pandava brothers. He's the best warrior. He's the most virtuous. And so he's going to be the one who's heading up that army. It's going to be cousin against cousin, plus the homies. So, Krishna is going to talk out the terms of the battle. It's like he's having like a war council. So they both agree. Okay, they're going to have a meeting with Krishna. Now when they show up at the appointed time, however, they find Krishna taking a nap on his couch. He's just sprawled out, sleeping peacefully, like totally not ready for this meeting. And here's part of the lore. Duryodhana, being like really arrogant and full of himself, he stands next to Krishna's head, kind of looks over him. And then Arjuna, being very humble and unassuming, stands more politely next to Krishna's feet. They're both waiting for him to wake up. Okay. So when Krishna does wake up, so imagine like if Krishna's lying like this, his head's here, his feet are here, and Duryodhana is sort of over his head, and Arjuna is by his feet. When Krishna wakes up, the first person he sees is Arjuna, because Arjuna is in his line of sight. He doesn't see Duryodhana, who's kind of next to him. So what Krishna says is that he's going to give each of these warriors a gift. And because he saw Arjuna first, he's going to let Arjuna pick first. So Arjuna's humility pays off. He comes in, unassuming, humble, and Krishna says, well, I saw you first, so I'm going to let you pick first. Okay, so what are the choices? The choices are this. One man can have all of Krishna's armies and all of his weapons. All the armies, all the weapons. The other one gets Krishna himself as a counselor, but none of the cool stuff. No material objects. Okay, so armies and weapons on one hand, Krishna's guidance on the other hand. So what do you think is the right answer? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so this is an easy choice for Arjuna. He says, with no hesitation, I want you, Krishna. I want only your guidance. But Duryodhana, on the other hand, is thrilled. He's like doing a happy dance because he just wants all the stuff. He's thinking that Arjuna is a big doofus for making what is to him obviously the wrong choice. Like, why would you just want Krishna's guidance when you could have all the armies and all the weapons. Okay. So I want you to think about this for yourself for a minute. Imagine that you're going to embark on a really important project and there's so much at stake. Like, what is it that would be so amazing for you in your life? Like recording an album or becoming a judge or doing some amazing startup or writing your book or think about like running for office, like what it is that would be such an amazing project for you to fulfill in your life. And you're given the choice, like, well, you can have this amazing staff, you can have a shit ton of venture capital, or you can have this blue guy who's like the incarnation of God, sort of hanging out with you and telling you what to do. It becomes a harder choice when you think about it that way. All right. So, but for Arjuna, it's easy. And this is the moment that reveals to us Arjuna's character. So, here's the thing about Arjuna. He is not attached to the outcome of the battle. He doesn't really care if he wins. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around, right? Like, why go into a battle and fight if you're not super attached to winning the battle? Okay. So here's the thing, it's his humility. He doesn't know if in the cosmic order of things, is it better for me to win or to lose? I don't actually know. I'm not so arrogant to think that I'm supposed to win or that I'm the better person to win. I mean, I think I am, but I don't know for sure. So he's not super attached to winning. What he really wants to do is his sacred duty, his dharma. Have we heard this word before, dharma? Some of us? Yeah. Okay. So, dharma has some different meanings. In Buddhism, it's the teaching of Buddha, the dharma. But in Hinduism, which predates Buddhism, it's really two things. It's the cosmic order of life in the universe, how things fit together, how things work together to keep going, the wheel of life. That's sort of the big dharma. And then the little dharma is your role in that project of keeping life going. What is it that you are to do? What is your calling? That's a way of thinking about it. So, and it's different for every person, right? It's the way that you're supposed to contribute to life. And it's different. It depends on the circumstances of your birth. You know, were you born into a wealthy family or a poorer family? It has to do with your disposition. What do you like? How are you in the world? What are your talents? What are your gifts? What are your passions? All of those things contribute to your dharma. And the thing is that for Arjuna, his dharma is more important than winning the battle. And he feels like if he chooses Krishna to be his counselor, Krishna will help him fulfill his dharma. And he knows that Krishna is here to set the world in a better order. So if he follows Krishna, he's going to be doing the good things for the world. That's what he wants to do. He's supposed to nourish and sustain the world. So this choice is how Arjuna ends up with Krishna driving his chariot into battle. So here's a metaphor, or an analogy rather. Imagine working out a deal in which Jesus is driving your tank. That's what it is. Okay, it's like that. Okay, so what does this story tell us so far? It reveals to us the character of these two opposing warriors. The story illustrates the different points Arjuna and Duryodhana occupy along the journey to self-realization. The evolution of the self. But before we go into the journey of the self, let's just talk about what is a self. What is a self? So according to the Bhagavad Gita, I'm going to turn to the second teaching here. It is not born. It does not die. Having been, it will never not be. Unborn, enduring, constant, and primordial. It is not killed when the body is killed. Okay. Also, from the second teaching, this is verses 22 through 24. Whoops, that's right there. As a man discards worn-out clothes to put on new and different ones, So the embodied self discards its worn-out bodies to take on new ones. So the self sort of lives inside the body, but it's not the body. Weapons do not cut it, fire does not burn it, waters do not wet it, wind does not wither it. It is enduring, all-pervasive, fixed, immovable, and timeless. That is the self, according to the Bhagavad Gita. That's you, according to the Bhagavad Gita. In yogic philosophy, we talk about the anahata, the heart center of energy. And anahata means untouched, unstruck. The part of you that has never been injured or traumatized. And that part of you, according to this philosophy, is absolutely fearless. Fierce in its compassion. I think that's kind of an inspiring concept. All right, so earlier in the quarter, in Gilgamesh and in Genesis, you remember we talked about the growth or the narration of a person, or sorry, maturation of a person over a lifetime, right? Gilgamesh meets Enkidu and it touches him in certain ways, and he's changed by the grief and loss of his dear friend. And then in Genesis, we talked about learning lessons throughout life. But in the Gita, we're talking about maturation over many lifetimes. Reincarnation, we're not talking about just you growing over your life, but yourself, your soul, growing over many lifetimes. Okay, but what is the self doing that is taking so many lifetimes to accomplish? All right, the Hindu answer is that it is on a journey. And here is a little chart of the evolution of the self. First, the youngest souls. They're down at the pleasure button down at the bottom on the left. You can see that there. I call this stage sex and chocolate. This stage is just about pleasure. And there's nothing wrong with that stage. There's nothing wrong with sex and chocolate. It's great. It's great. Most people like those things. But the thinking is that eventually we get tired of those things. Like you can only have so much, and you're like, is that it? No. We think there must be something more to life than just immediate pleasure. We start to delay our gratification. We start working towards long-term goals. We want personal achievement, the respect of our community, titles, wealth, a sense of material security. So think about Gilgamesh. What was something that was really important to him? What was really important to him is that he went off to slay Kumbaba. Why? He kept talking about having his name on the bricks. Remember? He was like, come on, Enkidu, we're going to get our name on the bricks. He wanted a good reputation. He wanted to be seen in a certain way. So he was able to delay pleasure for achievement. Achievement is the next dot, right? Can you see it? Right? And you are all at least at that part in your journey as your college students. It's not easy. It's not always pleasurable. You're working hard. You're delaying fun in order to get your paper done or to study, right? You're working towards something more long-term, so you're already at least here, right? Where these first two stages, both pleasure and achievement, are the path of desire. And it's probably pretty clear to you where Duryodhana, little d, where he stands. He is on the path of desire. He wants to win. He wants to be the king. He wants to be the big boss. He wants other people to bow down to him. He wants to rule the heck out of Kurukshetra. Right? We see this because he chooses the armies and the weapons. There's a lot of attachment on the path of desire. It's wanting stuff and wanting things to turn out a certain way. Can you identify with that? Wanting stuff and wanting things to turn out a certain way? Yeah, it's like very human, isn't it? Of course. It feels very natural to want things and to want things to turn out a certain way. However, even achievement, it starts to lose its luster. There's a point where you want for others as much as you want for yourself. You want to give back. You want to make a better world. And that's our hero. He just wants to do what's best, what's right for everyone. He doesn't even really think of pleasure. He's not that concerned about his reputation. his soul has moved on. So, you know, when you hear stories about people who are famously successful and then they give it all up to go build libraries in places where there aren't libraries, or they start a new foundation, or they donate a bunch of money for medical research or things like that. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. So that's that next step of service, of wanting to give back. That's where Arjuna is. Okay, but here's the thing. According to this philosophy, even service at one point isn't enough. So, and I think we saw this last week when we read Miguel de Unamuno's short story, or novella, rather more of a novella than a short story, Saint Manuel Bueno, Martyr, in Basic Writings of Existentialism. We all read that last week, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so remember the protagonist, the priest Don Manuel? He lived for his community. He daily sacrificed himself for his loved ones, and he was adored by all. And even a life that rich and that fulfilling wasn't quite enough. He craved something more. He was deeply sad, right? What he craved is the belief that there's another dimension. He wanted to believe in an aspect of existence, of life, of being that was transcendent from human mortality. He craves a God that he can't quite make himself believe in. What he craves, I think, is liberation. That last stage, right? Kind of off the journey. Moksha is the Sanskrit word. So liberation, moksha, what is this liberation from? It's liberation from human finitude. Finitude as in like the opposite of infinity. The way that we are trapped in our bodies, the way that we experience ignorance and suffering and death. We can't know all there is to know with our finite minds. We suffer from our attachments. And of course, our bodies themselves are vulnerable, right? We're reminded of this all the time, especially when there's a pandemic, or a shooting, or a fire. Incomprehensible injustice, when we experience pain and confusion, and our limitedness stabs us in the heart. There comes a time when all that life has to offer us simply isn't enough, and what we really want is freedom from it. We want to die our last death, not be reincarnated in human bodies. We want to die our last death and merge with the universe, embodied here as Krishna. In the 5th teaching of the Gita, Krishna describes this joining to the infinite spirit, attaining inexhaustible joy, finding the pure calm of infinity. So what the Bhagavad Gita tells us is that not only is it true that everyone can reach this liberation, but everyone will. You will get there, teaches the Gita. It's a natural unfolding. The journey will continue indefatigably, and the destination is inexorable. Our actions can speed up that process. We get closer to liberation by the way that we live our lives. Or we can slow it down if we keep messing up. But the end is the same. We're going to get there. In the 9th teaching, Krishna says, women, commoners, men of low rank, even men born in an evil womb, you can all reach the highest way. You can all reach me. Okay, so that's enough background. Let's get back to the battle, okay? So here's a tale of the tape, comparing our two adversaries. So let's look what each of these characters bring to the battle. So over there we've got Duryodhana, that big old army, weapons of mass destruction. Probably he's got everything Krishna can offer. And he's on the path of desire. He's very much attached to winning, to glory, to ruling Kurukshetra. Then, there's our hero Arjuna with a smaller army, fewer weapons. And he's just doing his dharma. He's walking the path of renunciation, the path of service. Okay, so, the battle is about to start. Chariot against chariot. all the warriors lined up on the field. And Arjuna says, wait. I'm just not sure about this. I don't want to fight my family. Those are my cousins, my uncles. Some of my tutors are over there. Like, this is really messed up, right? And Sanjaya, do you remember Sanjaya? I mentioned him in the very, very beginning. He's the narrator. He's telling Dhritarashtra a big deal what's going on. Sanjaya describes the scene like this. This is in the first teaching, which you'll read. Arjuna slumped in his chariot and laid down his bow and arrow, his mind tormented by grief. And this pain that Arjuna feels is the beginning of the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And here they are depicted. Here's Arjuna kneeling before Krishna, ready to receive his wisdom. And throughout the text, what you're going to read is that Arjuna is questioning Krishna. And Krishna will patiently but forcefully explain himself. Throughout this dialogue that you're going to read, Arjuna and Krishna discuss the nature of life and death, of being and non-being, and of dharma. Most of all, Krishna gives advice for how to grow as a soul, how to move along the path, how to reach him. And what is Krishna's advice? It's yoga. For real, it is. And it's not necessarily the kind of yoga where you put on special pants, tie yourself up in a pretzel, although I do really like that kind of yoga. I am a registered yoga teacher. But the yoga that we're talking about here is much broader. It might include body and breath work, maybe, but there's a larger sphere. And actually, in the version of the Gita that you're reading, Barbara Stoller-Miller's translation, the word yoga she translates as discipline. So as you're reading, whenever you see the word discipline, originally that was the word yoga. Okay, so why discipline? Why is discipline, aka yoga, why is it so important? Let's see Krishna's argument for discipline. This is from the second teaching, verse 66. Without discipline, he has no understanding or inner power. Without inner power, he has no peace. And without peace, where is joy? Okay, so what he's saying is discipline gives us power. And this is not necessarily a hierarchical power, not power over others necessarily, but power in the sense of agency. And power can give us peace, and peace makes possible joy. Does this make sense? Discipline, power, peace, joy. All right, so let's hear more about this discipline. What exactly does this look like? What does that mean, specifically? There are many ways to trace discipline throughout the Gita, and I'm just going to share with you some of my favorites. Okay, on my reading of the Bhagavad Gita, there are at least 3 aspects of this discipline, and there's actually more, but these are the ones I'm going to talk about. So the first one I'll discuss is pratyahara, withdrawal from the senses, and that's a kind of a necessary start. No matter what other kinds of yoga you do, you've got to start with pratyahara. And then the second and third are bhakti, devotion, and karma, non-attached action. And I'll go into those each in a little more depth. And these are all different flavors of discipline that will appeal to different personalities. So some will find themselves drawn to one or the other. Some of you may enjoy pursuing a combination of these different types of yoga. And when you read the Gita yourself, you may see other kinds of yoga woven throughout. But these are the 3 I'm going to highlight tonight. So I'm going to start with pratyahara, and then go a little more in depth with bhakti yoga and karma yoga. Okay, so let's start with pratyahara. This is a withdrawal from the senses. It's an interiorization of attention. So moving your attention from without to external stimuli to within. What is going on inside of me? Watching my own brain. It's kind of related to one of the course learning objectives for core, which is metacognition. Watch yourself think. Be aware of your own thinking, right? So as you read the Gita, you will find sprinkled all throughout these messages about distancing oneself from the senses, from what you sense externally, and noticing what is happening inside of you. The most explicit explanation I found is this quote. This is from the second teaching. When, like a tortoise retracting its limbs, he withdraws his senses completely from sensuous objects, his insight is sure. So Krishna is saying here that if we want to be sure of our own insight, if we want clarity and insight, you gotta slow down your mind. You gotta stop taking in everything around you. You have to get some distance, some quiet, some isolation. Turning your mind inward and paying less attention to external stimuli. So when we practice pratyahara, we become more tolerant to pain and cold and discomfort. We have a little bit less desire. We have more equanimity. We don't freak out as much. We have fewer cravings. And the idea is that as we develop strength and insight through pratyahara, that will help us with all other kinds of discipline. It will help us with at least these other two kinds of yoga that I'm going to talk about. Next, bhakti yoga. This might be my favorite. I go back and forth. Maybe karma yoga is my favorite. I'm not sure. I like them both a lot. Okay, so the usual translation of bhakti is devotion. But I'm not sure that the word devotion really captures the sweetness of bhakti yoga. You can think of it as affection, as loving delight. I think toddlers and animals and grandparents are our best teachers of bhakti. Have you ever been with a toddler at a lake and they see a duck and they just go nuts? They just want to pet the duck, they want to feed the duck, they're just completely delighted and enamored by the duck. You know what I'm talking about? That's bhakti. That's bhakti. You have a pet at home that you're missing? Dog, cat, fish, Komodo dragon. Yeah. However, the way that you love your pet, that's bhakti. You may feel it for a baby in your family, or an elder, best friend, partner. There may be a place that's really special to you, like a backyard or a beach or a place in the woods. It's all bhakti. Now what Krishna says is that devotion gives us wisdom. I want you to think about it for a second. Devotion gives us wisdom. Here's some text. It's on the slide. I exist in all creatures, so the disciplined man devoted to me grasps the oneness of life. Wherever he is in me. So remember that Krishna, like I said before, he's everyone and everything. So if we develop affection and care for Krishna, that extends to everyone and everything. We're in love with all of life. We care for every being that we meet. So I don't know if you remember this from Matthew. I know it's been a few weeks since we read Matthew. But in chapter 25, he says to his disciples, whatever you have done to the least of my brethren, you have done to me. Remember this part? Some of you? All right. So the poorest, the most downtrodden, the weakest, the smallest, the homeless woman at the metro station, she is God. However you treat her is how you treat God. So just imagine if there was more bhakti in the world. I have another quote for you. I love this quote. It's from Ram Dass. Treat everyone you meet as God in drag. A little more on bhakti, just a bit. In the ninth teaching, Krishna says, no one truly devoted to me is ever lost. I think what he's saying here is that when we love, right, he says devoted to me, but he is everything. So when you're devoted to life, when you're devoted to beings, when you're devoted to the world around you, when we love, we find our way. And we'll see this again next quarter when we read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's one of, I think, the most moving books that we read. We're going to read it in the second quarter together. Viktor Frankl asserts that love is noetic. like poetic, but with an N, N-O-E-T-I-C, noetic. It means knowledge giving. So according to this teaching, love itself is the source of wisdom. When you love more, you know more. One more quote about bhakti. This is from Gandhi. To be a real devotee is to realize yourself. When we are devoted, we not only gain wisdom about the world, but about ourselves. So when we love, we become more wise. When we love others, we love ourselves. Okay. So that's bhakti yoga. We're going to move on to the last kind of yoga that I'm going to talk about tonight, which is karma yoga. One way of describing karma yoga is to make our actions sacred. How do we do this? By letting go of attachment to particular outcomes. So I'm going to explain this a little more because it can be pretty tricky to understand, especially when we are steeped in a capitalistic culture that's like so focused on results. But I'll give you some examples and we'll just go a little deeper into the text. So think of it like this: running just to run. Not to get a record, not to burn calories, not for a particular goal, but just doing it, right? Do you ever cook or bake as sort of a meditation? Giving a gift with no strings attached, giving a gift not expecting anything in return, not even credit. So maybe you do get a good result. Maybe you do get a runner's high, or you get a really nice cake when you're baking, or someone writes you a beautiful thank you note. But you don't need these things, and they're not the point. I have a couple different translations of the third teaching to share with you. So from Barbara Stoller Miller, this is the version you're reading. Freed from attachment, perform action as sacrifice. Freed from attachment. So he says that attachment is bondage. If we concern ourselves too hard with how things will turn out, with what we will get in return for our labor, we limit ourselves. We feed our ego, but we starve our soul. We suffer. Krishna says to perform action as sacrifice. But what does that mean? You may think of the word sacrifice as like giving something up. Does that sound familiar to you? Sacrifice is like giving something up. Right, yeah, that's correct. But also it means to make holy. So vice, second part of the word sacrifice, it's related to the root kachu, as in factory, which means to make. Sukari means sacred. So to sacrifice is to make sacred. So to perform all action as sacrifice is to make our actions sacred. This teaching says we should focus on the task at hand and not what we might get from it later. This is the same verse, but translated by Stephen Mitchell. Stephen Mitchell is the same guy that wrote the introduction to Gilgamesh, that guy. So he writes, the whole world becomes a slave to its own activity, Arjuna. If you want to be truly free, perform all action as worship. So one thing I like about this translation is I like the way Mitchell phrases the problem of being a slave to activity. Do you ever feel like a slave to activity? You got a to-do list and you just feel like in bondage over it. I do sometimes. Yeah. All right. Like your schedule is just dragging you along. Yeah? Okay, so the suggestion is that when we focus on the fruit, like what we're going to get later, and not the labor itself, not the activity itself, then we aren't experiencing freedom. If we dig for water, we are slaves to our digging. But if we just dig to dig, then we're free. I'm going to give you one more example. Okay, so this is a little tricky. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh, and he passed away very recently, last year or two. But he was a Buddhist peace activist, and he wrote this vignette about washing the dishes that I think adds some insight. So I'm just going to read this little snippet for you. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh. There are two ways to wash the dishes. The first is to wash the dishes in order to have clean dishes. And the second is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes. Okay, so here's the difference. If, while washing the dishes, we think only of the cup of tea that awaits us later, that's hurrying to get the dishes out of the way as if they were a nuisance, then we are not washing the dishes to wash the dishes. What's more, we are not alive during the time we are washing the dishes. We are incapable of realizing the miracle of life while standing at the sink. So you may find yourself with lots of to-dos. You may find yourself with problem sets, with reading responses, with practice, with some activity you said you would go to, or some commitment. And you may find yourself treating it as a nuisance, like a thing to just get through and get over with so that you can have your real life later. Do you ever find yourself in that position? Oh, just let me just get through this thing so that I can enjoy my life later, right? Thich Nhat Hanh says that when you have that mindset, you're not really alive during that time. And when you spend a lot of time in that mindset, it trickles over. So that not only, if you can't be present and enjoy doing the dishes, you're not going to be present and enjoy your cup of tea later, right? You're still always in that, like, what next mindset. Let me get through this nuisance and get to the next thing. Okay, so what if we consecrate the idea of washing the dishes? What if we sanctify writing papers or walking to class or sitting in lecture? What if everything is an offering, an act of service? So that's karma yoga. Okay, so we're going to recap. Since the name of this talk is the Bhagavad Gita, what the Bhagavad Gita says about how to live, let's come back to one of the most pervasive questions of life. What am I supposed to do? How many times have you asked yourself this or asked another person this? What should I do? What am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. Overall, the Gita's answer is do your duty, do your dharma. How can you lovingly serve life? This is from Bhaskar's translation of the third teaching. Do thy duty even if it be humble, rather than another's even if it be great. So you have your own unique dharma according to the Gita. You have your own way of contributing to life that's special to you. Okay, why? Why are we supposed to do our dharma? So it's for the well-being of the world. It's to keep turning the wheels set in motion so that we can all eventually get to liberation. It's to nourish and sustain this world of beings and to serve all of life. Okay, but how do I know what my dharma is? Say you're on board, you're like, okay, I get it, Krishna, I'm supposed to do my dharma. Okay, but what is it? Like, how do I know what it is? He already answered that question. You figure out your dharma through practicing yoga. You figure it out through a disciplined practice of interiorization and love and service, right? So discipline brings wisdom. It can look different in different people's lives depending on your personality, your temperament, your station in life. Tonight I've shared with you pratyahara, bhakti, and karma yoga as a possible route to knowing one's dharma and attaining moksha. In English, that's discovering one's sacred duty and finally becoming liberated from human bondage. And I've chosen these three because I think you will be able to recognize them as you read the Gita. You'll see a phrase and go, oh, I think he's talking about karma yoga there. Oh, that sounds like bhakti. And perhaps I've chosen them because they appeal to me personally. But what a beautiful message from the Gita. Love and serve. All right, so we're going to zoom out. We're going to wrap up by taking a big step back. I have a final overarching question. Is this story really about a battle? All right, there's a battlefield. Okay, I'm going to argue no. It's not really about a battle. Krishna does not need Arjuna to fight. He isn't urging Arjuna to fight because he wants Duryodhana defeated. Right? If all Krishna wanted was to defeat little d, he could just do that himself. He doesn't need Arjuna to do it for him. He's a supreme being, right? He could just do it. He wants Arjuna to fight because it's the journey of his own dharma. His own sacred duty is to fight to restore justice and kindness and order to Kurukshetra, not only for the benefit of the people of the land, but more so for his own soul. Metaphorically, he is slaying his own desire and relinquishing the fruit of his labors. That is the journey that he must take. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit about Gandhi's interpretation of the Gita. Gandhi wrote that the metaphor of battle is a product of the culture in which it was written. It was the perfect metaphor for that time and place, right? It made the struggle more compelling and more inspiring. But we aren't to take it literally, according to many scholars. Paramahansa Yogananda says that Duryodhana, little d, symbolizes the ego, and Arjuna represents the soul. So the battle that's about to ensue can be seen as a battle between ego and soul. The ego wants pleasure and achievement and glory, and the soul, what does the soul want? To love and serve, and to eventually be free. So here's a question that I invite you to ask yourself when you find yourself wanting something. Is this desire coming from my ego or from my soul? Paramahansa Yogananda writes, each person has to fight his own battle of Kurukshetra. It is a war not only worth winning, but in the divine order of the universe and the eternal relationship between the soul and God, a war that sooner or later must be won. All right, I hope you enjoy reading the Bhagavad Gita and discussing it in class. I have two recommendations for you. Number one, read it as if you were Arjuna. Read it as if Krishna were talking directly to you. Second, imagine that you are Krishna. You are every blade of grass. You are the fragrance of earth. You are the taste of water. You are the sound of Om. You create yourself through your own magic. All right, thanks for your time.